So what we have to do is disguise this repair and then give the car a wash. So let's see how we can do that. So the way to do that, I think, is just to put the mud flap back on. And this went on like so. And this was somehow or other in there. Like that. So we've got the mud flap on, not real good, but it'll do for now. Put a bit of tape on there and give it a quick spray with primer. There we go, it's pretty rough, but it might do just for this particular occasion. So next we're going to throw back on the snorkel, and I'm just going to chuck the old one back on for now. So she's had a wash and a bit of a degrease as best as possible to do without really getting it up in the air, and I can't do that, of course, but it's looking pretty good under there. Do you recall how in the most recent episode, Rise of the Troopy 07, I was talking about taking the Troopy to a different mechanic because the first one was, I think as I described it, a bit enthusiastic. Well, it turns out that he wasn't. It's just that the solutions he offered were not in the slightest bit concrete. He just said there's something wrong with the spring, or there's something wrong with the brakes, or there's something wrong with the whatever, but without either providing a solution or even estimating a cost of repair or even diagnosis. And so I went to this other fella, and he has accurately diagnosed the issues, and they are springs and brakes and bearings and stuff like that. But not only has he been able to show me, because I popped down to see him, where the issue lies, because there's busted springs and sagging springs and all sorts of stuff, brake drums at the rear that won't come off, wobbly front wheels, you know, so the bearings are stuffed, leaking swivel hubs, dripping engine oil and stuff like that. But he's been able to pretty well identify what the issues are. So we are looking at a fair amount of work, which is rebuilding the front swivel hubs, replacement of both rotors and disc pads in the front, new wheel bearings in the front, a couple of suspension components, you know, such as the steering dampener, bushes and stuff like that. With regard to the engine leak, he believes that it's the power steering pump, and I don't know too much about them, but I understand that it is not driven by a belt, but in fact driven from the camshaft, I think he said. So it goes into the engine block, and it leaks around there. There's like an O-ring, I believe he said, that hardens and flattens and oil comes out of there. So he's going to replace the whole pump because there's other leaks. And so it's a, you know, a kind of a guaranteed fix, and I'm okay with that. With regard to the springs, new springs all round, and so of course that'll be new springs and components and shock absorbers. So all up it's going to cost a few bucks. Without giving exact figures, I don't, well, I've got an estimate, but without giving an exact figure on the cost of repair, I can say that it's pretty close to the original purchase price. So in other words, it's going to double the cost of the vehicle, but what it will give me though is a pretty well everything brand new under there. And he did say that most of the stuff under there is original. It may have had shocks at some point, but other than that, probably brake pads and brake shoes, but other than that, it's all pretty well original, which is pretty remarkable given that it's a 33-year-old vehicle and it's got over 600,000 Ks on it, so it's pretty damn good. So what it means, of course, is that all I'm really doing is kind of catching up with a lot of the things that probably ought to have been done, you know, with regard to springs. I said one of them's actually busted. One of the leaves and one of the keepers as they sort of hook up onto the shackle, or not onto the shackle, but on the mounting part, whatever that's called, and busted or snapped off, and so all of that stuff will be new. So in essence, it'll be pretty well new underneath there with new springs, new shocks, new drums, new brake shoes on the rear, new wheel cylinders on the rear, new discs on the front, new disc pads on the front, rebuilt swivel hub because they leak oil, new wheel bearings, and so on. So, you know, knowing then full well that all of that stuff under there then is good, solid, safe, new, etc. So I'm not at all unhappy about that, and I'm keen to get it on the road, and I'm keen to see it again. Now it's going to be a couple of weeks because some of those parts have to come from interstate. As you can understand, front shackles, springs, etc. are not the easiest to obtain, given that the vehicle is 33 years old and the newer ones have coil springs in the front, you know, so those shackles really are restricted to those 25 or 30-year-old cars. So anyway, I'm quite excited about it. Now, naturally, we'll still have to deal with a few things such as, you know, those rust issues. So we want to paint the roof. We'll have to deal with that rust that's in those two rear sliding windows, surrounds, and I'm wondering whether the best way to do that would be to either get hold of or fabricate some kind of gull wing, you know, so that you have these opening windows there. But look, you know, these are things that you can more slowly spend money and time on as time goes by, rather than this big huge lump sum and getting all of this stuff fixed. What it will do, of course, though, is give me a roadworthy and be able to get the vehicle on the road, and that'll be great fun because then we'll be able to make some videos following some bush trails or just touring generally, you know. Now check out the video on Rust Never Sleeps for this car, because this one's just about to be uploaded. the second part, Rust Never Sleeps 02, because I've just done some work on the roof of this, and I've just got one more top coat to go, and then that video will be going up too. So great fun. Talk to you soon.